I want to talk about one of the most important stories in baseball this year. One of the most important stories off the field was what the people who run baseball decided to do about the sticky stuff being more and more prevalent in the game. Pitchers have been using sticky stuff more and more, and it became a sticky stuff scandal. So I want to talk about how this has happened before. History repeats itself. I also wanted to talk about not only the sticky stuff, but the physics and the science of why spinning baseballs spin, and then why adding more tacky substances on your fingers and the baseball actually spin it more. And then talk about the data associated with the performance in the game. How did this spin rate increase that was measurable because of new technology, how did that impact winning, losing, hitting, pitching, and everything else in baseball? History always repeats itself. This is a graph showing run scoring in baseball during the dead ball era. The dead ball era is from 1901 to 1919. The dead ball era, as you can sort of see in that red rectangle, it was a low scoring era. There was 2 years where runs went up because they changed the baseball. The baseball actually got springier. And what happened was right after the baseball got springier, within the game, the pitchers learned to throw spitballs. They also called them emery balls. So they called them trick pitches, or freak pitches were all over the game. The increase in freak pitch use went really high around 1913. And in 1920, before the season started, the Lords of Baseball decided to ban trick pitches. They got rid of them because the pitching was getting stronger and stronger, keeping run scoring down. The other big story there, besides the trick pitches, was the emergence of Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is a Red Sox player. In 1919, at the very end of the dead ball scandal, he leads the league in home runs. He sets a record for all-time home runs, been 29 home runs in 1 year at playing for the Red Sox. Famously, he gets sold to the Yankees in 1920. And in 1920 and on, we get the era of the live ball. Now, the live ball, dead ball thing really doesn't describe a lot of what happens. In 1920, they ban the trick pitches. And most scholars think that, yeah, the ball might have changed, but the evidence for the ball change is actually pretty low. It's better evidence that because of that rule change, pitchers stopped throwing these trick pitches. They stopped throwing the freak pitches. There's a lot of evidence associated with that, how the owners in baseball sold out to this idea of increased scoring, increased home runs in 1920. And Ty Cobb, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest baseball players ever, he says freak pitches, all these trick pitches, were outlawed in 1920 when the owners greedily sold out to home runs. And this theme of owners greedily selling out to offense will show up again. This is a theme that comes up. But that's the history. I wanted to talk about spin. So a ball spins in the air, and not everyone understands the physics. Let me give you like a 1-minute tutorial on the physics of baseball spinning. So this idea here is that if I throw the baseball over here to the batter and the ball is spinning like this, like the image is showing, it actually changes the pressure above and below the baseball, much like an airfoil changes pressure above and below the baseball so a plane can take off. This changes the pressure above and below. A spinning baseball has pressure differences. And you can see these pressure differences with the break in the ball. As the ball moves and changes its direction by a throw, you're really measuring this pressure difference because of the spin. Now, there's a few other forces involved, but this is a great way to explain the Magnus forces that make a ball break. But that still doesn't get at the sticky stuff. What's the tacky stuff? But I wanted to show you some of the differences. These are great graphics, these past two slides, done by Devin Hahn and Bill Politis of BU. We worked together to create these images so people can better understand how a pitch can break and how it can move off normal. The other better question is, how do you generate spin? Now I'm going to show you, I don't throw fast, but I do play some baseball. When you throw a baseball, there's no spin generated for the biggest part of your arm motion. So there's no spin generated here at all. It's only at the very end when I release my thumb and other fingers on the ball like that that's when I can start to impart the spin. So spin is generated in that last 6 to 10 to 11 milliseconds of the throwing motion. Okay, so that's how it happens. So in the beginning part, there's no spin, no spin, no spin. I release those two fingers, and all of a sudden, my fingers can start imparting spin on the ball. This is shown like a four-seam fastball. We'll talk about that a lot, but there's lots of other grips that pitchers do, lots of other motions and finger movements to change the spin and the direction and flight of the ball. That's pitching. Technology's gotten better, much, much better to understand and measure the spin of the throws, of the pitches. So spin, again, is generated like this. The next question is, how does the sticky stuff allow us to get more spin, right? So you can see how spin is only generated for a very short time in the throwing motion, in the pitching motion. At the very end, when it's just your fingers on the ball, pushing and creating spin, like this photo here. This is another way to show how spin works. This is a theoretical look at spin. This experiment, done in Japan, had a pitching machine pitching the balls at the exact same speed, but with different spins. So the 30 is revolutions per second, and then there's 40 and 50. The 50 spin is the higher spin. So the batters, they had real batters in this case, just hitting against these pitches, but as the spin went up, the batters missed more. This is a practical look at how changing spin changes batter performance. It's just an experiment. The batters knew nothing about the changing spin. All they knew was that they were tuned in to the right pitch speed, and they were trying to make contact. But as the spin went up, the ball was rising a little bit more because of more spin, and that spin impacted hitting performance. This is another look at that study, but I also show this graphic. This is an important graphic to look at. This batter is swinging under a four-seam fastball. A four-seam fastball is the most common pitch thrown in baseball, and it's the one I demonstrated where you're pitching it this way and spinning it this way. So the axis of spin is like that. The graphic shows you how spin changed ball contact with the bat. Batters just hit the ball more. This is why more spin matters. And this is why there's a selective pressure against four great pitchers who have more spin. So how do we get more spin? How do we try to generate more spin? And this is where the tacky stuff, the sticky stuff comes in. But remember this idea shown here on the right of the ball going over the bat. This is a four-seam fastball that rises over the bat, and this is an important concept associated with better spin rates on a four-seam fastball. This is every pitcher from 2015 to this year. If they threw 100 four-seam fastballs, that year is on here. And what we're graphing is how fast they throw it on the bottom, and then the spin rate on the vertical side. There's a relationship, but it's not a perfect correlation. Okay, there's a lot of different spin rates here. You can see it going from the lowest spin rates are approximately 1,800. There's some noise on the bottom, but then you get high spin rates around 2,700. That's a big range of spin rates and a big range of velocities, but this makes sense. Pitchers are different. They're just very different creatures. But what's great about this is we see the relationship between velocity and spin. Okay, that's a key feature here. And if I am able to accelerate my arm more, get more arm speed, and deliver the ball faster to the batter, what ends up happening, and this is part of the reason velocity goes with spin, as I have acceleration, pitch it faster, what happens is my trajectory as a high velocity pitcher is actually lower. I'm throwing it lower because it's going faster. If you throw really weak like I do, you kind of loft it really high to home plate. But if you're fast, your release point is lower. And what that release point means is that you actually have more time on the ball. You have more time pushing the ball with your fingers. So high velocity is correlated with high spin. I've shown you sort of the theory of spin and performance. But one of the anecdotes that gets to sticky stuff is Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer has experimented to try to pitch with more spin his whole life. He gets to the major leagues, and this is his first data point in 2015. He's right in the middle there. His velocity is about 93, but his spin rate's a little over 2,200. That's his whole season of throwing fastballs. Next year, he's still trying to spin it more, this is how much better he gets in spin. Not much. He's trying to throw it more, spin it more. He gets a little more velocity. That's probably strength training he does on the off season. This is the next season, 2017, 2018, 2019. But then he puts sticky stuff on his fingers. The next 2 years are 2020 and 21. This is anecdotal evidence. This is Trevor Bauer's data. He's an outspoken pitcher. He's controversial these days because of other behaviors. But this anecdotal data shows you that with the sticky stuff, all of a sudden, you can jump up your spin rate. His velocity is about the same. His velocity in all these years is about 94. You can see that, it's right 94 miles an hour. But his spin rate jumps tremendously as soon as he puts sticky stuff on it. Anecdotally, sticky stuff increased spin rate. Spin rate, we showed you before, misses more bats. So theoretically, increased spin rate, miss more bats. Sticky stuff gets the increased spin rate. This data here is really the reason the scandal happened. The game was changing. This is all time. This is 1901 to 2021. That bottom line is all the strikeouts per game. The top line is hits per game. Now you can see the dead ball era, live ball era hit rates. You can remember what I referred to way back in the beginning, but you can sort of see it's relatively constant. Then it takes a big hit the past 2 years. The past 2 years, hit rates are plummeting and strikeout rates go up. This is the problem that baseball was trying to address by trying to manage the sticky stuff on the baseball. The sticky stuff is a foreign substance. Since 1934, no one in baseball was allowed to put any foreign substance on the ball. They were doing it illegally. Trevor Bauer talks about this in many ways. He talks about Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. He talks about it in a book just published called The MVP Machine. He's giving you what he's done. He's an experimenter. He's an empiricist. He figures out how to put the sticky stuff. And this gets spread throughout baseball. How do we know it gets spread throughout baseball? Well, this is the data. The blue dots there is every four-seam fastball pitched in that year, graphed against the spin rate of every four-seam fastball. So 2015 to 2016, 17, 18, 19, and then 21, you can see the spin rates increasing throughout all of baseball on the four-seam fastball. This is what the scandal's all about. Spin rates are going up. The data shows it very clearly. As spin rates go up, you can see why hit rates go down, because you miss more bats. Throwing this four-seam fastball, you miss more bats. Above those big blue dots is every single day in 2021, every four-seam fastball thrown by every pitcher that day is averaged. So this is a daily average of spin rates of four-seam fastballs. And you can see from the beginning of 2021, this season, until June 2nd, it's a pretty flat line. But it's very high. It averages out to be well over 2,300 revolutions per minute. Now it's great because at 2015 is where the tech comes in to be able to measure this thing really well. You can directly measure the spin, and that just happened in 2015. But you can see the increase. The increase can't happen like this by training. Trevor Bauer showed us this. And the anecdotal reports say that the Houston Astros got very good at increasing four-seam fastball with various methods, probably lots of understanding of the right tackiness. So this whole increase can't be just better improved performance, normal physiology, normal exercise, improvements. This has to be something else. Okay, so this is the data of the spin rates over the last 7 years, and then the beginning of this year. Then they changed the rules. They absolutely changed the rules. This is what the commissioner says. He's going to eliminate the substances that cause the increased spin rates. The rule has been on the books forever, but now they're going to get down and stop it because the spin rates are going up. There's an imbalance between the offense and defense, too many strikeouts, too few hits. That's really the driving force. Okay, it was about the game itself that was less appealing. So the outcry about the game goes up. People are like, oh, too many strikeouts. The perception was the game was tilting to the pitchers. Okay, so by perceptions, appearances, and outcries, they had to do this. They did this. But they made it about eliminating the substances, which is just factually incorrect. Okay, they had the ability to eliminate the substances for a long, long time. But now they started to check hats, gloves, and belt buckles to try to manage this. This is the graph expanded. I gave you the graph earlier through June 2nd. Now look at what happens to the spin rate when they start enforcing the rule. It goes down, and it goes down to 2015 levels when you were able to start measuring this. This is the graph of the scandal. Spin rates go down. But the question after that is, what does it do to hitting, right? If this is true, right, if sticky stuff improves spin, and you get rid of this sticky stuff and spin goes down, that means offense should go up. Well, the black line is the average of this offensive metric called WOBA. You don't need the details, but it's a pretty good way to measure offensive performance, batting performance. And this black line is the average of WOBA by month, all the data from 2010 to 2019. That's 10 years of data of WOBA. So you can see the pattern through the months. There is a monthly effect on WOBA, batting performance and pitching performance. Batters perform better when it's not cold. If it's cold in April and September, their batting goes down. You can see by how much. But then, this is 2021, when spin rates are high and there's a problem in the game. Offense is dipping and pitching performance is increasing. Look how low April and May 2021 are relative to the previous 10 years. Then they changed the rules. So if they change the rules, batting performance should come back. Guess what? It came back. So as soon as they changed the rules, they got rid of the sticky stuff, you could see you're much more in line with the normal pattern of an offensive performance metric. I like these data because it explains both, I've explained hopefully the theoretical reason why adding more tackiness to the ball will increase spin. I've showed you how spin should experimentally drop batting performance by increasing spin in an experiment, less good contact. And then I've shown you the data that as you increase the spin and then decrease the spin, you get this variable changing spin, you can see how it impacts batting performance. So we've shown it different ways. Talked about it theoretically, scientifically. We've talked about it as a measurement, and we talked about anecdotally. We talked about Trevor Bauer and his own experiment with it. And then the real data writ large around the whole league. It really mattered. Okay, and it was kind of a good thing that they maybe got rid of all the sticky stuff on the baseball. But you guys notice the increase in the daily spin rates after the big drop. This is a mystery. I think most people suspect that pitchers are learning to put the sticky stuff in somewhere else, put it like other parts of the uniform. No one knows, but this is the data. So now we can speculate about this. But I wanted to talk about this whole idea of baseball has a scandal, they deal with it. This whole response is very similar to the steroid scandal 25 years ago. 25 years ago, there was a steroid scandal. Believe it or not, there were rules in the book 25 years ago that you can't use steroids. It just wasn't enforced. Same thing here. There's rules on the books. You can't put a foreign substance on the baseball, but pitchers did. They talked about it, and you can see the data associated with it, how they did it. But again, it wasn't enforced. So the bottom line, if that, you could look at the reasons why they did this mid-season. They had the sticky stuff scandal and they changed the rules. The rules really weren't about some sort of moralistic, let's catch the cheaters thing in both the steroid scandal and this scandal, because the rules were already there. There was a tacit, let it happen. And then finally they said, no more, because the game was sort of tilting. It was in balance. 25 years ago, there were way too many home runs. People didn't like all these home run records being set. Now they didn't like the idea that there's more strikeouts than hits. So the rules associated with have nothing to do with catching the cheaters. It's got to do with appearances. It's got to do with perceptions, what the fans think, what the writers write about. And it's got to do with the outcry. The outcry has disappeared. Have you heard sticky stuff worries since they've changed the rules mid-year? No, but look at this. Spin rates are going up. I don't know what that means. It's something to speculate about, like, are they learning how to get sticky stuff on their pitches since then? Anyway, lots of food for thought. Thank you for suffering all my charts and graphs. Thank you for listening.